What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with the 5 best and 5 worst things about the Motorola Moto G Pure. So in this video, we'll be going over the various pros and cons of the device so that you know exactly what to expect if you happen to decide to get the phone. Now, I do want to make it very clear though, the various cons that I will be pointing out certainly are nitpicking, considering this is a very budget-oriented device. Obviously, if you're getting a phone like this one that's at the lower end of the smartphone market, you shouldn't expect to get every feature that you'd be getting with a more premium phone. But maybe you have an older, higher end device right now and you're considering switching to the Moto G Pure, then you're definitely going to want to be aware of some of the various features that you will be missing out on with this phone. But that being said, let's start by going over the top 5 best things about the device, as the Moto G Pure does bring quite a few things to the table in general. Now, starting off is the battery. Now, with the Moto G Pure, we're getting a 4,000 milliamp hour internal battery, which, of course, I've seen better out there, but at the same time, that's a pretty generous amount of battery capacity. And in addition to it being 4,000 milliamp hours, we're also getting 10 watt fast charging. Now, again, 10 watt fast charging isn't too special either, especially when there's quite a few other Android phones out there that can recharge at a much faster rate. But on the other hand, 10 watt fast charging paired up with a 4,000 milliamp hour internal battery really does give you that right balance between getting a large amount of battery capacity, but at the same time being able to recharge it at a decent rate as well. So I would definitely expect to get through a solid day of usage with the Moto G Pure with just one charge. Now, the second pro about the Moto G Pure, and this is something that in general you would take for granted with an Android device in 2021, but that is that we're getting USB-C charging. And again, I figured that micro USB would be a thing in the past, but there still are some budget devices being launched in 2021 with micro USB. Now, USB-C is better than micro USB in pretty much all ways, so I am glad that despite this being a lower end phone, Motorola has decided to give us a USB-C port for charging and data transfer. Now, it seems like as time goes further and further on, it's becoming more and more difficult to find a smartphone that features a 3.5mm headphone jack. And what's nice is that the Moto G Pure does indeed have one here. So if you do want to use wired headphones and you don't want to use an adapter via the USB-C port, then at least you can plug your earphones directly into the Moto G Pure via that 3.5mm jack. Now, one benefit of that, of course, is that you won't need an adapter to use wired headphones, but in addition to that, you can both use wired headphones and recharge the phone at the same time. Now, not only are 3.5mm headphone jacks really hard to find with flagship phones, whether it's any of the various iPhones or the Galaxy S21, for example, or Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, but it looks like also with Samsung's A series, the new generation that's coming out in 2022, we're also not going to be getting 3.5mm headphone jacks. So again, I'm glad to see at least with the Moto G Pure, we do have that here. Now, the fourth pro about the Moto G Pure is definitely the software. Now, there are some pros and cons in itself for the software. The first one being is that you shouldn't expect really to get too many major Android software updates. You'll get security patches here and there, and the phone does come with Android 11. But as far as getting Android 12, it probably will happen at some point, but it'll be far, far into the future. And that's not really a good thing, especially considering that Android 12 is already out right now. But what I do like about the software is that it is very nice and refined. Everything works very well without any sort of bugs. And while Motorola has added in some additional features on top of stock Android, which I do cover in my dedicated tips and tricks video for this phone, the phone still does have that very stock look and feel. So if you've used any other Android device in the past that features stock Android, then the interface here with the Moto G Pure is going to feel very familiar to you. So that's definitely a good thing in my opinion. And then finishing off with the 5th best thing about the Moto G Pure, that definitely is that we get both a fingerprint sensor and face unlock here with the phone. So the fingerprint sensor is located on the back of the device. It does work very well. It's nice and accurate. So I've had a great experience with that. And sometimes with devices in the segment, such as the Samsung Galaxy A02s, for example, we don't get a fingerprint sensor. So I'm glad that we are getting that here with the Moto G Pure, despite this being a very budget device. And then you can see right here, we do also get face unlock. So I do appreciate that we do have multiple methods for accessing the phone. So now that we've gone over the top 5 best things about the Motorola Moto G Pure, let's now go over the top 5 worst things about the device. Now again, this is a very low-end phone, and in fact at many carriers, it seems like they are giving the phone out for free actually if you switch in from another carrier. So if you do happen to get the Moto G Pure for free, then I suppose you really have no room to complain about anything. But again, if you're switching from maybe a more advanced device, then I think these 5 things are things you will want to be aware of when getting this phone. Now the first one is the processor. Now with the Moto G Pure, we're getting the MediaTek Helio G25 processor paired up with 3 GB of RAM. Now in general, the Helio G25 is certainly not a fast processor, but again, for a very budget phone like this one, that's not a bad processor, for them to give us here. Now I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test with the phone, and I'll show you the scores from that test right now. But essentially, I got a single core score of 133 and a multi-core score of 497. So what I recommend doing is running this test in your current phone and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of whether or not the Moto G Pure will be a performance upgrade for you. Because of course, these numbers don't really mean anything unless you're comparing it to another device. But in general, if you were looking to get a device for text messages, phone calls, occasional web browsing, and occasional social media, and I suppose also occasional photo taking because the phone doesn't quite have the best cameras out there, then the Moto G Pure will get the job done for you. But if you are planning on using this device pretty much all throughout the day, maybe you're someone who's constantly on your phone, then I think you probably will be disappointed with the processor here because it really isn't that powerful, and especially compared to some of the higher-end Android phones out there. Now, the second worst thing about the Moto G Pure is that there is no NFC. Now, if you're familiar with NFC, essentially it is the technology that allows you to make mobile contactless payments. So you can do that through Google Pay, very similar to how Apple Pay works on iPhones, for example. So if that's something that you're already used to doing with your current phone, then you will be disappointed because you can't do that here with the Moto G Pure. But if maybe you're someone who doesn't care about that feature, then I suppose it's really not a deal breaker of any sort with this device. But I do want to point that out, that there is no NFC with the Moto G Pure. The third worst thing about this device is that there is a water drop notch and a pretty thick bottom bezel. So this general design of the phone, and I did mention this in the comments section on my first impressions video of the device, but this design really could have launched on any phone within the past 3 years. Having this water drop notch up top and then a thicker bottom bezel, this easily could have come straight out of 2018. So it's really not any sort of really modern design here. And in general, it's not terrible, but at the same time, there's really nothing exciting about the design of this phone. So that's something to also keep in mind. Now next up, you definitely will want to be aware that the Moto G Pure does not have an ultra wide angle camera. This device has a dual camera setup with a 13 megapixel main camera and then a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera to assist with portrait mode. Now stay tuned for my full review video about the Moto G Pure, as you'll be seeing a variety of different photo and video samples from it. And in general, the cameras do produce some pretty nice looking images. But again, if you want to take ultra wide angle photos, you're not going to be able to do that here with the Moto G Pure. And that is a feature that we have seen with quite a few budget devices. So it's not like it's something that's unheard of, but again, you're not getting that here with the Moto G Pure. So if your current phone has an ultra wide camera and you find yourself using that quite a bit, then you won't be getting that feature here with this device. And then finally, for the last worst thing about the Moto G Pure, and again, this is to be expected for a lower end device, but also something that I do want to point out, and that is that we're not getting a whole lot of internal storage. So with this phone, we're getting 32 gigs of internal storage, and in 2021, that's not really a ton because apps keep getting larger and larger. And this is both something we've seen with iOS and Android because as these various social networks gain more and more features, obviously that's going to result in larger app sizes. And I've even noticed that other apps that you would expect not to be that large in file size are also very large too. So again, it seems like in general, apps seem to be taking up more and more space per app. So with 32 gigs of internal storage, expect to maybe put a couple of social media apps on here and probably not too much beyond that because you will still want to give yourself some space so you can take photos and videos with the phone. And then of course your various call logs and text messages will be taking up space on the device as well. And you can see here, since getting the phone, I've already used 55% of the internal storage, and a solid portion of that, you can see right here, 11 gigabytes, is exclusively for the operating system. So again, the operating system in itself is already taking up a solid portion of the internal space in the phone. So 32 gigs really is not a whole lot. I would have liked to see 64. That would have been awesome. Now there is one good thing though. We do get microSD card expansion with the device. So you can add a microSD card to expand the storage. It'll allow you to offload some of your photos and videos, for example, which certainly is a good thing without a doubt. But at least in my opinion, nothing's better than having the maximum amount of internal storage as possible. But these are my 5 best and 5 worst things and various pros and cons about the Moto G Pure. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it to be helpful. And whether or not these various things matter to you, I just hope that this gives you a better idea of what you're getting if you do happen to decide to buy the phone. But in general, it's a pretty nice device from Motorola in the budget segment, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.